Hi, everybody. It's Hal Levey Payments once again. And for this conversation, I am joined by Max Spivakovsky, who is Senior Director of Strategy and Operations, Global Payments Risk Management, and Onboarding at Galileo. Welcome, Max. It's nice to have you.
Great to be here, Hal.
We're talking about the ways and means that we've got to think about fending off fraud in digital banking. Part of the idea of defending the perimeter, keep the bad actors out at the edge. You don't have too many problems that might happen when they get inside. But it's easier said than done. So when we're thinking about digital banking, we know that it's prime hunting ground for the fraudsters. Now, on the other side of the equation, the customers, the business clients, they want to see a, a streamlined digital interaction. That's a balancing act, and it's not an easy one. What are financial institutions finding as they have to navigate keeping things safe, but keeping them also speedy?
That's a great question to start with, Hal. So, financial institutions are facing multiple challenges at the moment. Well, I will call it dual challenge. Combating the one of the most sophisticated fraud schemes that we are observing over the last period of time, especially with the enhanced AI and ML capabilities. But as you mentioned, while meeting the customer expectation, the main need is to provide the seamless digital experience throughout this entire journey. And the balance that those financial institutions require is they must be able to leverage both proactive and reactive approaches and the tools to protect against fraud. But while at the same time, they also have to be able to tailor and customize for the convenience and the customer experience. We know that client retention, client experience pretty much drives the engagement of utilization of the apps, utilization of the programs. And the fortunate part about the financial institutions nowadays is they don't have to build or manage those tools alone. There's always support. Like we are moving away from the industry, moves away from building things in-house to be more reliant on additional support from either the fintech space, the technology space, and so on. So the modern and real-time fraud prevention platforms and tools, they will enable the financial institutions to spot those fraud patterns. They will be able to provide the financial institutions as part of their partnership, those emerging new fraud patterns that are coming up, while at the same time addressing this fraud risk and maintain compliance. Now, we are always thinking about fraud as a back office solution, but actually in this case, fraud and experience come together. By reducing the fraud, we're enabling a much more sophisticated and better customized customer experience. So adopting those next generation prevention capabilities, technologies is pretty much an essential and a paramount nowadays to maintain the trust with our customer, but at the same time delivering the supreme digital customer experience.
Change in digital banking with new technologies. At the same time, there are different attack vectors. There are different ways the fraudsters are sort of probing and trying to get an advantage. To your mind, how did this partnership approach do two things? How does it think to be, you used the term earlier, reactive and proactive? How can a partnership model be both reactive, proactive, and how does it start to address the emerging fraud trends? I'd like you to actually shed some light. What is happening in fraud that's coming at us right now?
Absolutely. So in terms of the proactive approach, we need to be able to predict the customer experience. We need to be able to predict the shift in customer spend pattern. We need to be able to address those changes either through our policies, through our strategies, and at the same time, extending the client the seamless experience. So this is the proactive approach where we are trying to address their needs upfront. The reactive approach is we will be under the assumption that the fraud happened, unfortunately, and the reality is fraud is here to stay. We must deploy solutions, post-fact solutions, operational policies, operational procedures, and the capabilities that will allow us to better cater for the client in near real time. We must make sure that the customer is continuously informed of their experiences, that if something happens on the customer account, the last thing the customer would like to hear is something happened a week and we cannot just allow that. We must enable the customer in the full knowledge of their experiences, either through notifications, through in-app notifications, any kind of other methodologies that will allow us a much broader and richer outreach to the individuals.
When we think about the ways partnerships work, I guess the aspiration is that each side leverages their strength, and that the combination is, the old saying, the sum is greater than the part. When we think about that, you'd mentioned fintechs and FIs and any number of providers working together. There's a shared operational burden. There's reduced cost, and we're talking here about flexibility. How do all those things come to bear on a partnership model? How do you start to be adaptive? And what are the strengths that each party brings to the table?
That's a great question. I think from the fintech space and the technology space, the financial institution bring the customer base. They bring the knowledge of exactly who their customers are, how they would like to tailor the customer experience, what are the programs and what are the programs that the customers are interested in, as well as what is potentially the customer spend that we should be anticipating. While at the same time, the fintech or the providers, they're somewhat agnostic to those experiences, right? They don't know exactly what's happening. But what those fintechs come to supplement to the financial institutions is a agnostic relationship, meaning the platforms that they're offering can tailor or can be adjusted, can be leveraged for any kind of client tailored solution. We are talking about the payments here, so any platform that we think of nowadays should be able to cater for multi-channel experience, right? It can be on the cards, it can be via the ACH wires, FedNows, where the industry is moving towards. So it is very interesting to see how the knowledge from one entity supplements or comes together with the knowledge from the fintechs or other vendor suppliers. Again, as I said, the knowledge that the vendors is bringing, it's completely agnostic to the customer experience, but they're looking more on a holistic and a tailored approach that can be extended to the financial organizations.
If you could take me through a hypothetical streamlined experience that the FI actually has with a consumer-facing or customer-facing interaction, take me through a good balance of experience and security.
Absolutely. Let's think, for example, about the card transactions and the customer experience spending via the cards. We can talk about physical cards, virtual cards, and so on. Just as a customer, we would be under the expectation that as we are leveraging the virtual cards or the cards in our wallets, we would be able to secure, or we would like to be more secured in our understanding that those cards cannot be leveraged in card present transactions, for example, right? So this is where the platforms that come to supplement the real-time decisioning must be able to be sophisticated enough to get the signal of what type of card and how potentially this card can be leveraged, right? Now, where the combination of the knowledge comes in place is where the financial institution provides the necessary signals with the type of card, while the vendor and the supplier of the risk knows how to entertain this request in real time while keeping the customer protected. This is just one example. Another example is you probably observed over the last couple of years that there's more and more emerging DAOs or consortiums that coming into the market. And as our financial institutions would like to protect their clients and as well as would like to protect themselves from the reputational risk, it is very interesting to see that as the customers pass through the CIP and the KYC experience, how those signals as part of the onboarding phase can be leveraged from the vendors, meaning how can we tap into the right and the accurate data elements from the consortiums to be able to drive a much better decision. For example, if somebody took over my social security number or leveraging my name, I would like to make sure that my financial institution is fully aware of any potential synthetic fraud that is happening with my account by tapping into the vendors. So this is just another phase or another example of the client journey, the client digital journey, where we are going all the way from the client onboarding and finishing this thing with the client spend.
Let's say you are having a discussion in an advisory capacity, and you're talking to an FI. If you had to point out what they are doing that isn't working anymore, I'd like you to think about that. What simply doesn't work anymore? What approach doesn't work anymore? And more than that, if you were to start prodding them to think about how to re-examine and update their defenses in a philosophical way, what would you say?
It's actually a great question. The legacy solutions, as we know them, just don't work anymore. Leveraging a one single tool as pretty much used to be the paramount of the fraud mitigation years ago. It is just not applicable. When we're thinking about the FIs, they must approach the fighting the fraud in a much more holistic perspective. So, for example, it requires both technological tools as well as multiple data elements, the data points, to give them the enough ammunition to complete the full picture of the client experience. So it's a complete shift from where we were, I want to say, like maybe 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, even the pre-pandemic phase, to where we would like to go going forward. The digital experience that every financial institution strives to right now requires us to be much more proactive, as I said before. But then at the same time, the proactive approach requires us to be very rich in our data elements with the data points that we would like to action on. So implementing the more or newer capabilities such as AI-driven real-time monitoring, behavior analytics, while at the same time it is paired with some additional platform capabilities that also extend a holistic approach for fraud exposure. That should be the focus of the companies that are trying to either penetrate the market, staying relevant in the market, or actually bring the experience to the next level. As I said, the legacy approach, we don't know, we know it's not working. So it is always good for any financial institution that starts the journey as we speak to start with something small. Starting small with validating existing AI solutions, some even legacy AI solutions, while at the same time thinking broadly how they can scale up based on the success that they're seeing, some of the success metrics that they're defining for themselves, as well as the success metric for the fraud. The success metric of accuracy, reduction into our false positive, but while at the same time collecting the feedback from the customer, how the customer perceives the journey as the financial institutions add more and more the friction, necessary or unnecessary friction, and embedding this feedback as part of their 360 loop.
So with that sort of holistic mindset and embedding this all in the process, you've sort of addressed what I want to ask as a last question, but maybe we can pinpoint a service or product. From your vantage point, you are aware of what's coming down at us from the fraudster side of it. You know, AI is out there, machine learning is out there, all number of advanced tools are out there. What are you anticipating to be the next new attack vector that FIs are going to have to grapple with? What's the innovation they're going to leverage to combat it? And more than that, what do you think might actually happen when we think about the movement toward faster payments, which is certainly we're getting there. What's going to be different?
Absolutely, it's a great question. The amount of tools available right now in the market is just amazing. One of the vectors that that we probably will be anticipating going forward is a unfortunate increase in the first-party fraud, in the account takeover. And what's emerging more and more over the last period of time is the easy access to generative AI capabilities. The fact that the fraudsters now don't have to be potentially fraudsters. either the ChatGPT or any other solution on the market right now potentially can extend them those pieces of code that they need to perform the malicious activity. The increase in the asset transfer fraud, and what is more interesting emerging recently is, I would call it fraud as a service. It's one of those realms where the fraud, the offer fraud related, where the bad actors offer fraud related activities to individuals that just lack those technological expertise to commit the fraud. So all of those are the factors that are on the rise currently. Now, what's interesting is that unfortunately there is no silver bullet that can combat all of them. The new trends, the emerging trends that we are seeing over the last couple of years, and especially with the development or the enhancement of the AI capabilities, the ability to properly leverage, understand, and properly leverage the AI capabilities, the ML capabilities, the machine learning, the modeling, the large language processing is what will help us to better combat the fraud. The better understanding of our client base will help us to better understand the fraud. It will all help to make making the fraud detection more precise, while at the same time more adaptive to the new threats. As we just touched on this point, I think generating going forward strategic partnerships with financial organizations, with fintechs, to continuously monetize on any type of fraud prevention policies and strategies and tools will also help, while at the same time it will also help us to stay ahead of any of those emerging threats, as we mentioned before. Now, interesting enough, there's a very interesting quote that I would like to say, is that we can unfortunately all be exposed to threats, but we don't have to be victim of the threats. By leveraging the right tools, understanding the capabilities, understanding our client experiences and what exactly the clients are trying to achieve will help us to be much more proactive in the ways we would like to battle the fraud, in the ways we would like to engage the customer within their digital journey, the digital experience, and at the same time help us, the financial institutions, to protect ourselves from reputational risk, reputational fraud, and obviously the financial impact.
I think that's a great quote to end with here. You might be exposed to fraud, you may consistently be exposed to fraud, but you need not be a victim. And that's an important point. Max, I want to thank you for the time. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you so much, Hal.
Take care.